Live?
I think we're live now.
We are live. Welcome to another episode of the Point by Point Tennis Podcast. With you are Jish and Carlos. And today we're going to talk about Wimbledon, and we're specifically going to talk about the midpoint review of the tournament, in which the quarterfinal have already been finished, and the semifinal lineups have been set up. So we have some very interesting lineups here. We have a lot of great stories to talk about. And I'm super excited to jump into all of it. How about you, Jish?
Yeah, totally. Some great matches we have to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. So we have on the men's and on the women's side, the quarterfinals finished today, between yesterday and today. We had matches between Alcaraz and Rune, Medvedev and Christopher Eubanks, who has been one of the biggest stories of the tournament. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We also had Novak Djokovic playing against Rublev. And then we have Sinner playing against Safulin. And on the women's side, we had Svitolina with a big upset win over Iga Swiatek. We had Vondrousova, who also had an upset win over Pegula. And how about Jabeur having a bit of revenge on the defending champion, Elena Rybakina? What a terrific result for Jabeur there. And finally, we had Sabalenka today also beating Madison Keys, who continues to have good results in the biggest tournaments. Like she kind of disappears in the tour, but then in the Grand Slam, she's always there doing something. So pretty cool to see Keys there. But Sabalenka took that matchup. So that means that our final or semifinals are set up, and it is going to be on the men's side Carlos Alcaraz against Daniil Medvedev, and on the other side a rematch of a 5-setter last year between Novak Djokovic and Jannik Sinner.
Man,
how exciting is that?
I'm stoked about that match.
Yeah. And I think fitting semifinal preview because or semifinal lineup, because these four players, you can argue, have been the best players of the year. I think you would throw in Rune in there in that mix, but I think these four guys statistically have been the best players of the year. And then on the women's side, we have this talk about the big three, right? And it's been the big three for most of the tournaments this year. But we have only one member of that big three in the semifinal lineup, and that is Sabalenka, with the upset, from Iga and Rybakina. So we have Sabalenka will play Ons Jabeur on the first semifinal, and then we'll have also, or in the second semifinal rather, and the first semifinal is going to be Svitolina and Vondrousova. And that's a huge opportunity for either one of those
to get into the final.
There. So that is an interesting lineup for the women's side. I think Svitolina, similarly to Christopher Eubanks for me, has been one of the biggest stories of this tournament. Not only because of her new, complete different tennis style. Like, who is this person?
She's playing amazing tennis.
I don't recognize her style of tennis at all, and in a good way. But not only that, but also all of the storylines with her in her personal life, being from Ukraine. She is playing for something bigger than the sport, and that's something that she's really bringing to her matches. And not only that, but she also just gave birth to a daughter
6 months ago. Right?
6 months ago. That's crazy.
It's insane.
That's insane. It's less than a year, and she's already been in 2 Grand Slam quarterfinals, and now this is a semifinal for her. So absolutely bonkers story. I think these are 2 amazing semifinal lineups both in the men's and the women's side, and I'm excited to jump into the discussion.
Yeah, totally.
So shall we start with the men's, the recaps? We can go as in much detail we want with some of these matches, but I did want to start off with, to me, what seemed on paper to be the most exciting quarterfinal matchup between Carlos Alcaraz and Holger Rune. Any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was surprised at the scoreline at the end.
Yeah,
I
right?
thought
Straight
it was
sets
gonna
victory.
be longer, and it was a big battle. It seemed like those points were very. I mean, they were very high quality.
Yeah.
There lots of running involved and really nice touch shots. I think
Great
for
shot
both
making.
of these players, it's so impressive how they've been able to adapt to this surface so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, Holger Rune came into this year without a single grass court win in his career. And to think that he made the Queens semifinal, and then was able to make this run to the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. What a sensational turnaround for him. A little bit similar to Sinner last year, where Sinner came into to the grass and he had no good result on grass. He may have had one win or two, but his grass career was not very good. And then he made that run to the quarterfinal, and he almost took out. Well, he took out Carlos Alcaraz in a round 16, and then almost took out Djokovic in 5 sets last year. So that run that Sinner had last year, very reminiscent of what Rune was able to do this year, in a surface that he's not necessarily comfortable with. He, in the end, he did look like he could be good on the surface.
Yeah.
And I think you can say the same thing for Carlos Alcaraz in a different way, right? I mean, he did have some success last year, making the round of 16 at Wimbledon, but it was always a little bit, he looked uncomfortable on the surface the whole time. And it was actually, testament to his talent that he actually made it to that round of 16 match against Sinner. But this year, he did play that warm-up event in Queens and ended up winning it. And I think that made a big difference because last year he came on cold into Wimbledon, and I don't think that was the best idea. And this year he really did make the best of it, winning that title, getting that practice right. His very first match, if you remember, in Queens, he looked very fish out of water for a little bit in that first match.
He played through that tournament.
And he played through that. He really battled through and learned. And by this moment, in this match against Rune, I mean, he looks at home on the grass. Yeah. I won't go as far as to say that he looks as good as on the other surfaces because he's just absurd on the clay and on the hard courts. But he's getting close. And I think his style of play, there are elements of his game that are really, really good for the grass. His serve and volley, the ability of him to play at net. The drop shots are really effective on this surface. I think, the even the slice backhand, like he's added that to his repertoire. It's funny that he said that, I'm going to come into the grass before the season started. He was like, I'm not going to use the slice at all. And then I think there was a stat that he used it like 42% of the time in one of his matches in Queens. And honestly, he's really, like, some people use the slice because you're supposed to on the grass, but it doesn't look great, right?
Yeah.
Tsitsipas comes to mind. Like his slice is just not, it's not it. And Alcaraz's slice is very effective on this surface. I just think he's learned a lot. And this was, to me, his most dominant performance of the tournament. And he's had to go through some difficult opponents to get to this point. I mean, he had to beat Jerry in the third round, who was very dangerous because of his style. A guy who serves really hard, and he wants to do, his serve +1 tactics. He's very effective at it. And then he had to go through a revitalized Matteo Berrettini, who had an absolute phenomenal performance against Alexander Zverev, to the point where I was messaging you saying he actually might be the favorite to win that match against Alcaraz, the way he was playing.
He was playing really good.
So the fact that Alcaraz was able to go through guys like that and then take on a guy who's basically his contemporary, right? He could be his rival of who knows how many years, and Holger Rune, who's been able to maybe not match what Alcaraz has done, but close in terms of his ability to challenge the best players in the world. He's beat Djokovic twice, in big tournaments, including Paris last year. I mean, so the fact that he was able to do that against those guys and then beat Rune, so like you said, so comfortably, super impressive. So I was very impressed with what Carlos Alcaraz did today.
Yeah. Yeah, he was returning really well, and I think his touch shots were just everything was dialed in.
Yeah.
And you're right. I don't think he necessarily finds this his most preferable court.
Right.
So yet, at least, but it may be one day. I mean, the way he's moving, there's elements of like some really good. Like he's very agile
Yeah.
on the court now. Whereas just even a few matches back, I feel like he may not have been.
Yeah.
Right. So
Honestly, it got to the point now with his movement that I don't even think about it anymore.
yeah, and granted, it is the second week now, and the court is going to play a little differently,
Yeah.
which I think actually favors him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah.
What happens?
Absolutely. I think it's gonna be something that is gonna be interesting just to see how Alcaraz is able to continue to learn
Mm-hmm.
and face different types of opponents. I mean, I think this is the first time. We'll talk about Medvedev in a second, and his win over Eubanks, but looking forward to that matchup right in the semifinal. It's going to be interesting because Medvedev is not the type of serve bot that these other guys like Berrettini and Jerry are, right, that he faced. But he is somebody that can dominate with serve, right? So it's a little different. And Medvedev, if there's a surface or type of surface that would benefit his game a little bit better against Alcaraz, it is a type of surface where you can rush Alcaraz. And I feel like grass is that one of those. I think indoor hard court's even better in that sense, but grass definitely better than some of the slower hard courts and the clay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see because Medvedev, he hasn't looked as good as Alcaraz, I think, in this tournament, but he could pose some interesting challenges. So that's going to be interesting to see. And also, it will be interesting to see how he handles his nerve because he got really nervous against Djokovic in that semifinal in Roland Garros. And if he were to face Djokovic in the final in a big stage like this, is that going to happen again? Like, is he going to be ready? These are kind of the questions that, are interesting to see if that happens, if those matchups happen. But yeah, anything else before we move on to the Medvedev Eubanks match?
No, I mean, yeah, I'll say the score 7-6, 6-4, 6-4. It actually seemed like a much tighter match than probably the scoreline says.
Yep.
But Alcaraz was also just hitting some ridiculous shots. I mean, he at any time when they were, getting to an exchange where it was sort of like a cat and mouse sort of situation, it almost seemed like Alcaraz was getting most of those. Right?
Yeah, he was just very smart with how to play the right shot and where to go.
But Rune was playing really well too. Some exciting points. So I'd recommend people to see the highlights.
Yeah. I would say one thing. I think Alcaraz, the way he's returning in this tournament, very similar statistically, not in style, right, and not in the same strengths, but statistically speaking, very similar to what Djokovic is able to do. He is winning a lot of return points in this tournament, and the way he is able to just block the first serve of some of these players. I mean, Berrettini came into the match against Alcaraz serving, about winning about 80% of his points on first serve. And he came into that match serving about the same percentage of first serves than in his match with Zverev. But he won like 15% less points because Alcaraz is just able to get into the first serve even if it's a big one, right? He's able to read them better. He knows how to block them into play. And once the rally starts, he's just so good from the baseline. He's just better than most people from the baseline. So that's the same thing that Djokovic does to his opponents, right? You can have somebody like a Hurkacz. No, granted, Hurkacz gave a lot of problems to Djokovic. He barely was able to break him. Yeah. But the fact is, in the big points, in the big moments, the reason he was able to do it is because he finds a way to put that serve into play, and once that happens, he's just a better baseliner. than anybody else, right? So Alcaraz, very reminiscent of that in the matches that I've seen. I wouldn't say to the same level because, it takes a lot of experience to get to the point where Djokovic is. A lot of the times it also comes with the decisions that are made. One of the things that from Djokovic's side that really annoyed me from Hurkacz in the match with Hurkacz was, Djokovic didn't do anything special to win those tie breaks. But that's the thing, right? He knows when he doesn't have to do anything special and let the opponent implode, right?
You can also say that about Djokovic whenever he plays, like even some of the greats, like with Federer or even Nadal.
But he does change depending on who he's playing, though. Like that's what the point I'm trying to say. Like there's some tie breaks you'll see him ripping the ball, right?
Yeah.
Because he knows that if he lets he just puts balls in play against, for example, Federer's just gonna blast him, right? So he has to be more aggressive too.
Yeah.
But then a guy like Hurkacz, who doesn't have that nerve, who doesn't have that, that good ground game, he could just let him implode. And Alcaraz is still learning how to do that. Sometimes Alcaraz just wants to blow everybody off the court, and he doesn't allow his opponent to just give him the
patient
point. Yeah, that patience, he still has to learn that. But there are a lot of similarities in the sense of being able to neutralize big servers on the surface, like the way Djokovic does. I don't see anybody else been able to do that except Alcaraz. That's a big strength that he's had in this tournament, and that's why I think he's been able to be successful so far. And obviously, he's also serving great. He didn't get broken today against Holger Rune, who's a great returner. No breaks. He only had one. He only faced one break point the entire match, which is absurd. He's not that big of a server, right? He serves big, but he still needs to do better with his, with his targets. Yeah. So that's impressive. He still has room for improvement, but yet he's winning his services games like that too. So I think all around Alcaraz has just been showing he's ready. I think, and we'll see. I think if he loses against, say, a Djokovic or maybe even a Sinner, I don't think it's because he's not well adapted to the surface. It might just be that the other guy played better on the day. I think that's more likely to be the case. But yeah, let's move on to his opponent in the semifinal. That is going to be Daniil Medvedev, who was able to beat Christopher Eubanks in 5 sets after going down 2-1. So incredible comeback for Daniil. He was very close to losing that match in the 4th set. It got to 3-3 in the tiebreak, and then after that he was able to take the advantage. But he was pretty close to being out of the tournament, so that's a very impressive performance. And he withstood a barrage because Christopher Eubanks actually set a record for winners in this tournament. I think he is the player with the most winners at Wimbledon in the history.
What?
Yeah. And in this match, he had like 70-odd, like 72 or something like that, winners.
Jeez.
Part of it is because he's been playing a lot of 5-setters too. But
yeah, that's insane. 74 winners.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And it's because he uses the serve and volley a lot, so he gets a lot of winners that way. He has a big serve, a lot of aces. So, but Christopher Eubanks, man, what a story.
Where
that
did
guy
he come from?
That guy, man. He's not young. I mean, he's young, but he's not he's not 20. He's like 27 years old. So his breakthrough coming this year is just such a wonderful story.
Yeah.
He came to Miami without being in the top 100 in the Miami Masters 1000 event, right? And he had that big run there, and before getting to that quarterfinal, he broke the 100 ranking. He didn't even realize that he had broke the 100, and he got really emotional about being able to do that because getting into the top 100, it means a lot to these players because you can get into Grand Slam events more directly. You don't have to go through as many qualifiers and all that, and have to spend so much time in the Challenger events. And let's be honest, the players that play in the qualies and in the Challenger events, they're pretty good too.
They're really good,
and to be able to get out of that group and to put yourself in a position to play main draws all the time, that's just life-changing in terms of the money, in terms of the opportunities you get. So it's incredible to see how Christopher Eubanks has been able, at 27 years of age, finally been able to discover the recipe for him
Yeah.
to be successful. So yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a wonderful tournament. I mean, there's some clips of him talking with Tiafo and Ben Shelton before this tournament just a few weeks
Mm-hmm.
ago, and he was just talking about, oh, it would be so amazing to be in the second week of Wimbledon, and people are watching you.
Yeah.
He's in the quarterfinals, and I was like, he actually did it. It was like a moment of like, I think he had visualized it and he made it a reality, which is so neat to see. And he's playing big tennis. I mean,
Yeah.
he's hitting the ball super hard, and winners off of his one-handed backhand.
Yeah.
And
Pretty
it's
sweet
not
one.
easy to do. That's what I'll say about that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Not easy to do, especially on this surface. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For me, like one of the things that was very endearing to see and very pretty funny. I think they asked him like, "What is the biggest, thing that you're gonna take with you from this run that you have had to the quarterfinal?" And he was like, "Oh, now I have lifetime credentials to Wimbledon because apparently there's if you get to the quarterfinal, you get lifetime credentials for you and a guest to come back and practice and all that, and so you get basically invited.
It's one of those cards that Federer needed to get in that he didn't
exactly
have
that
one
he
day.
almost didn't get didn't get allowed to get in. So one of those cards, and that's just like something you don't even think about that. It's what that means to a player like him who knows if he'll ever have. I mean, to me, he has the game to continue to do this. But, at 27 years of age, this could be just a one hot run, right? We've seen players do this once and never do it again.
I don't
Who
think
knows?
so this time.
No, for sure. I agree with you there.
Yeah, he may not have.
But in terms of that, that mentality of you never know if this is ever going to happen again. And look at what I achieved, and now I have this forever, even if I don't achieve anything else. So it's just spectacular to have a story like that of a guy who came pretty much out of nowhere. And one of the things that I wrote in my notes to discuss today in terms of, one of the topics was, who are some of the more disappointing results. For me, at the top of the list was the cohort of American men, because I had very high expectations for a lot of the men, including my finalist, who is Sebastian Corda, and lost in the first round, but also Tiafoe.
I mean, strong prediction there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what I was doing, but also Tiafoe. I mean, he's been showing some form, right? And I think grass really suits his game, and he just did not show up against Grigor Dimitrov in his match. So to see all of these players that have been, Taylor Fritz, for example, with the run he had last year to the quarterfinal, almost taking out Rafa. Having those players struggle so much in this tournament, the one guy from the U.S. that actually showed up was Christopher Eubanks. It's just incredible that he was able to do that. So just this incredible tournament from him. But I also want to give time to the actual winner of this match, which is Daniil Medvedev. And what a run for him, because he isn't really recognized that much for his grass prowess, but last year he did show some promise, right? He did get to the final of 2 consecutive grass events. That's where the Tim van Rijthoven
that we could not pronounce.
We had to practice a lot to be able to do that. He lost one of the finals. Tim van Rijthoven.
There you go.
So he lost to him in one of the finals, and then I think he lost another one to Hurkacz. But making 2 finals in a row for him, that showed that he can play on the surface. Then he got banned from Wimbledon, obviously, because of the Russian ban, so he wasn't able to show it there. To see that run this year and him be able to do it, and who would have thought, right? His favorite surface is hard courts, right? And he did not do that well at the Australian Open this year. He lost to Sebastian Corda pretty early. I want to say round 16 or maybe even the third round. And then his second best surface, apparently for him this year, because he won Rome, right? He was so happy about, oh, maybe I can play on the clay now.
Mm-hmm.
First round defeat at the French Open. To see him have his best Grand Slam result on grass, like that is a step up for me, for Medvedev. And I think his results this year were pointing us in that direction, right? He's been one of the top 3 players. It's been a big 3 this year, right, of players. It's been Djokovic at the Slams,
Mm-hmm.
and at the tour level events, it's been all Medvedev and Alcaraz.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd say Casper's been in there a little bit.
yeah, Casper.
Gets into the finals.
He got to the final of the French. We can give him a shout out. No show on the grass except for golf and weekend concerts. But apart from that, yeah, I mean,
the weekend's really good.
Yeah, it's good. He did enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
I just love the pictures that he has going like this at the concerts. Like all of the pictures of him doing that. And he's like, he doesn't even care about the grass. It's just insane. He was like, well, I got to the second round. I lost to a player who's better than me on a grass surface. It's okay. It's like, dude, you're 4th in the world, but it's okay. He got to the French Open final, and he's shown pretty good success this year. But yeah, in reality, there's three players this year, right? It's Medvedev, it's Alcaraz, it's Djokovic, and I think this result. I mean, I definitely underestimated him. I thought that some of the American guys were gonna take him out. It's just a testament to his consistency. And what this tells me is that even if he loses to Alcaraz in the next match or to Djokovic or Sinner in the final, this tells me that he's going to be a big factor at the U.S. Open. Because if he's doing this on the grass, I just can't imagine what he's going to be doing, at his preferred surface. So
yeah, I mean, it's amazing how fast this guy is.
Yeah.
He's still playing as if the grass is sort of like a hard court. And I don't understand how it works for him sometimes because he's
still receiving behind the baseline,
and
which just doesn't make sense for the surface.
The ball doesn't, bounce that high, but he's still somehow able to get there and create some really good shots.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because in contrast to Alcaraz also likes to receive way behind the baseline on the other surfaces, right, on the slower surfaces. But on grass, he's actually been very close to the baseline to receive. So he made that adjustment. Yeah. Medvedev, he just brought his game from the other surfaces to the grass. Yeah. And it's working. It is working. So it's going to be interesting to see that. But great result for him. I mean, he has some good wins along the way. Unfortunately, Lehechka, I think, had to retire in the match before. But yeah, I think he's had a good tournament overall. And I got to say, before we move from Christopher Eubanks, Christopher Eubanks actually won against Cam Norrie, who was a semifinalist last year, and also Stefanos Tsitsipas from 2-1 down. So
that's impressive.
That is impressive, and that is growth there because not only did he beat a player who made the semifinal to Wimbledon, he could have stopped right there and be like, wow, I made this achievement. No. He backed it up, and he beat an even better player in the next round. So that to me is amazing. And the fact that he also took Medvedev to 5, I'm very impressed. But Medvedev, I also am impressed with his tournament because he beat a guy it's not going to sound like a big name, but he beat Adrian Manarino, who is kind of a grass court specialist.
He's tricky on grass. And
he had a pretty dominant head-to-head against Medvedev, particularly on the grass. And he had lost to him in the, I think it was in Halle or in the tournament before. So the fact that he overcame that and was able to, to improve to the point where he could beat players like that were giving him trouble on the surface, I think that's impressive. He's definitely going to be an underdog, I think, against Alcaraz, but I think he can still win that, I think. But yeah, let's move over to the other 2 matches. Sinner, I think these two we don't have to talk too much about because these were a bit more one-sided, I would say, in terms of the expectation, and they ended up winning. So maybe let's start with Sinner and Safiullin. I saw part of this match, and the only thing I have to say from Sinner's part is he can rip that ball. Like Sinner. His shots from the baseline he has been the most impressive ball striker in this tournament, like bar none.
Wow.
He has been super impressive. Now I gotta say, he has played no one in this tournament so far. He's had a really, really good draw.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first saw this draw,
Yeah.
I messaged you and I messaged my dad, and I was like, first thought, Sinner's draw is amazing.
Nice.
There is no way he's not making the semifinal. And his draw even got even more open
Cleaned up,
because some
yeah.
people came out, some people got upset. So, but credit to him to actually do the job and make it there. He could have been probably his biggest obstacle could have been Taylor Fritz along the way, but he lost very early, I think, in the second round. So he hasn't really been tested, and that's the only thing that I'm worried about in the next match, because he is facing Novak Djokovic in the semifinal. So that is a big step up in competition from one match to the next.
Great.
But overall, I was very impressed with what I saw so far from Sinner at his highest level. Now, he's been sometimes a little bit off, and he will throw a few bad sets here and there. But overall, I've been very impressed with how he's played. And obviously, we saw what he did last year. He took out Alcaraz, almost took out Djokovic.
Gosh, it's so close.
Very
Oh.
close. So he's
Yeah.
dangerous, and I think he is a live underdog in that match against Djokovic. Anything you want to add?
No, I'm really looking forward to this semifinal.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like what I've been wanting, and I'm rooting for Sinner for this one, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll
It's
see what
go-
happens.
I feeling it's going to be a great match.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
So before we do previews, let's do Sinner Djokovic and Rublev. Anything you want to start mentioning from that?
Well, we should mention Rublev's ridiculous shot from the
Yes.
the match before.
Let's start
this.
with the positives for
Yeah.
Rublev. Yeah, for sure. No, that shot was ridiculous.
Yeah.
You should tell listeners.
Describe it. Yeah, so I actually don't know how that point actually began, but towards the end, Bublik was pretty much done with the point. So he just like many others, would hit the ball very hard. This was a down the line backhand that Bublik hit to Rublev's forehand, which Rublev was a bit off to his backhand side, so he couldn't get to the forehand. It didn't seem like he could get to the forehand in time to hit the shot, and Bublik, ripped it straight down the line and started screaming,
Yeah.
as many people would do if they were gonna hit an outright winner.
Yeah, it's like the
And-
continuous
Yes, it's
grunt
like,
into celebration
"Ah!"
scream. Yeah.
It's like okay, that didn't sound great, but it's
Close,
like a
it's
big
close.
release.
Yeah.
It's just like you get rid of all your energy. I'm done with this point. And Rublev somehow,
He just appeared. It was like,
he
teleported.
He semi dove to this ball.
yeah.
And he stretched out, got a racket on it, got it straight back into the court. Honestly, if like actually continued to pay the point, he probably could have gotten
Yeah.
that shot, and
He was
back
he was
in.
busy celebrating though.
He was busy standing and staring.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of shock on Bublik's part and the whole crowd. I think the whole
Didn't
crowd.
that bring up break point too? Like
it was a
it
very
was
crucial point.
it was
I
a
think.
big point.
Yeah.
And then he actually eventually I think
Yeah.
that was in the fifth set too, right? So he eventually lost that.
Mm.
Yeah, that was crazy.
But it's one that is worth watching again.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Well,
I also-
that became
yeah,
viral.
That
Like,
became like a viral shot.
yeah.
Yeah.
no,
It was ridiculous.
it was insane. And
Um,
honestly, Rublev
yeah.
played pretty well in this tournament overall. And I think having that victory over Bublik, who defeated him in the final in Halle, having that revenge, he actually blew a 2-0 lead in that match against Bublik here in the
mm,
round of 16. So the fact that he recovered and was able to pull it off in 5, and he actually took the first set from Djokovic. This is actually the only set that I caught like a little bit of, and I actually caught the moment that he broke Djokovic. And I was super impressed by the way he was playing. He was playing fearless. It was, that massive forehand that he has. And he was trying to dictate play, and it worked for a set. And then Djokovic told him, no, you're gonna stop using that forehand. I'm gonna take that away from you. Try to do something else if you can. And he could not. That's the problem with Rublev. He's a one-dimensional guy. And if you find the timing on his forehand, which is the big shot that he has, you pretty much just beat him. And a guy like Djokovic, he's gonna figure that out. So this matchup was always gonna be like this. That's why I was a little disappointed that Bublik didn't pull that out, because I really thought Bublik could give trouble to Djokovic, especially after I saw what Hurkacz did to Djokovic in the previous round and with his serve. A guy like Bublik, who has more skill on the grass, has more variety and more shots.
Than the tournament before, he was in quote unquote God mode.
He was in God mode. And he could have given Djokovic. I don't think he would have beaten him, but I would have gone to that match intrigued. Yeah. And with Rublev, I was like, it was good. He's got this. So I think now there's not too much more to talk about in terms of the match itself. I think I just gotta give credit to Djokovic for tournament in, tournament out. He's always predicted to be the favorite. He's always put this pressure on his shoulders. He just continues to deliver every time. And you just got to admire that. And now he's going to go into a battle with, the next generation of players, right? Yeah. The current generation and then the next generation. Three of the best players, or the most exciting players that, we have for the future and for the present, and Medvedev, Alcaraz, and Sinner. Yeah. So I'm super excited to see what's going to happen in those matches, and maybe with that we can actually jump into those matchups, those previews. So absolutely. Maybe let's start with Djokovic and Sinner, since we just talked about them. What do you think about that match?
Well, this is a rematch from last year, and I'm just hoping for a good quality match, that both of them show up and they play at their highest level. And if it goes to that fifth set, my money's on Djokovic most likely. But Sinner has a real shot here. He hasn't had as much difficulty getting here to the semis, so I think he's mentally probably more fresh. So I hope that gives him some advantage. Yeah. So, and maybe physically too, he did play his 4-set last round, but he's probably a bit more fresh, like not as tense, so hasn't had to go through too much. Yeah. So I would agree.
I think he's had a pretty great run to the semifinal in terms of, the physical and the mental expendigood energy. Yeah. He could not ask for any better route to this match.
A nice, good night's sleep. Yeah. Maybe get some good recovery massages. Get ready.
Absolutely.
And just play like lights out tennis. He needs to play some lights out tennis.
Probably. Yeah. And this is the question that we have of Sinner, right? We've already seen him do a lot of things and improve a lot. And I want to give. It's the talk around Sinner is so interesting because we have players that are, I think you and I are more on the overhype with Sinner side of things, but I think it's deserved in a way, but we're kind of in the overhype camp. There's a lot of people on like the total hater camp on Sinner. And the reality is probably somewhere in the middle, right, with Sinner, because he has been steadily progressing, and the stats will tell you. I mentioned in the preview of our episode that these four players are the best players of this year. And that is statistically undeniable. Mm-hmm. Like, if you look at the stats, they have the highest 4 winning percentages of the year. They have some of the best records against the top 10 and the top 5. The only exception to that, if we include one more player in, which we could, it is Rune. Rune and Sinner are the closest. and together they could have been 4 and 5. You could flip a coin between the two. I give a little bit the edge to Sinner just because he's been able to do it on the grass. Now a little bit better than Rune. And now, granted, he didn't have to run into Alcaraz in the quarterfinal, so that's a difference.
Yeah.
But to be honest, if Sinner would have faced Alcaraz in the quarterfinals, he probably could have beaten him. And Sinner did not, or Rune did not get really close to beating Alcaraz today, right? It was a tight match, but he couldn't even break him once today. So who knows? I think for me, Sinner might not have the. Some people might think that Rune has the higher ceiling just because Rune has the better all-court game and it does have more skills to his repertoire. But Sinner, the skills that he does have are more polished at the moment, right? So I think that's why Sinner right now is a better player between the two. And, the stats show it in terms of, who's won, the better percentage of their matches and all that. So I think Sinner is steadily getting better and better. Now, the big question mark with Sinner that we don't have with guys like Alcaraz and Rune is, can you beat a big guy in a big tournament? Like that has been the biggest issue with Sinner. And this year he's been able to do it a few times, right? He's been better at it this year. But in general, if you look at his record and his career against the top 5, 10, 20, it's pretty bad compared to Rune and Alcaraz. So this is a huge test and a huge opportunity for Sinner. A much younger guy than Djokovic, much more fresh in this tournament, has been through less battles than Djokovic. I think he has a big shot. And it's going to come down for me to belief. He has the tennis. I think the tennis is there. But he needs to have that belief to make it a dogfight. And I really want to see that step up in Sinner. Even if he loses, I don't want him to
back down,
to just go away. And this is a thing where maybe you and I have disagreed from last year's match. He was up 2-0.
Oh my gosh.
And I never felt like he was going to win that match. Because as soon as the third set started, he got broken, and Djokovic just took over the entire match. And it never felt like Sinner was going to recuperate,
It's hard because Djokovic just, I keep saying this but it's so true that Djokovic just gets so much better, after a set or two.
Yeah.
And in 5-set tennis, it's his advantage.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. He just gets stronger.
You don't want to get him to a 5th set or even a 4th set.
Yeah. You just got to get him out of there quick.
You got to get there. You got to finish him in 3.
Like Medvedev did in that final against him in the U.S. Open. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. But yeah, you're right. Last year's semis, towards the end, it really looked bleak.
Yeah.
For Sinner, it's just even the body language.
Yeah.
The body language did drop. I think a lot. It was a big turn in momentum.
Yeah.
But I think he's learning from these experiences.
Yeah.
And I hope it's going to be different.
He's a better player right now than he was then.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing that I want to see translate into some sort of results. Even if he doesn't win, I want to see him push Djokovic and not just permit, early breaks early on, even if he has a lead and then just fade away, right? And never fight back. I want to see something different, and I think he can do it. So we'll see. I'm still predicting. Well, let's do predictions for that one. I'm still predicting Djokovic just because he is, he's the 4-time defending champion on the surface,
When was the last time he lost on center court?
It must have been like 2010, right? Or 2011 or something like that.
I think one of his on-court interviews had mentioned it's been 10 years or something.
Yeah, like 10 years, yeah.
Which is
crazy.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. He's lost a few times at Wimbledon, but it's been on court 1.
He's gone a match point down a few times.
Yes.
But he's found a way.
But yeah, that's what he does. And I honestly just have to pick him just because of that. But I do hope that Sinner does make it interesting, and I think he can. Yeah. What about you?
I have Sinner.
You had Sinner pre-tournament, right?
Yeah.
Are you sticking with that?
Yeah, I'm sticking with it.
Okay.
Let's see. It's a coin toss. Yeah, I've noticed these days, especially since my bracket blew up in the women's singles, that I'm very biased when I do these. It's like, oh,
For the
who do I
players that you
want
like.
to- Yeah, it's just based on that. But I'm sticking with this one. I think Sinner has a really good shot here. I don't know if he's gonna do it, but I'm gonna pick that he does.
Hey, at some point Djokovic
Yeah.
has to lose to one of these guys, right? Could be now. Could be in this
Yeah.
match. Or in the next one. If he wins this. So we'll see.
We'll keep saying that, maybe, but I don't know. We'll see.
We shall see. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Alcaraz against Medvedev.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very intrigued by this match. I have no idea what to
How it's gonna
expect.
happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
how it's gonna play out, right?
I mean, we've seen them face each other twice. I guess we should have said this with Sinner and Djokovic, right? The head-to-head between Djokovic and Sinner is 2-0. But this head-to-head against between Alcaraz and Medvedev is actually 1-1. So they're tied.
Mm.
And Medvedev's win was before Alcaraz became this guy. But it was at Wimbledon, and it was in straight sets. So he beat him in one of the earlier rounds. And then obviously the second match, which Alcaraz won, we saw it was this year in Indian Wells, and he made Medvedev look like a rank 100 player. It was such a demolition job. But that was a very slow hard court, very much suited to Alcaraz's style, right? So I'm very intrigued to what's going to happen in this type of style, or using those styles in this surface. But at the same time, Medvedev, like we were talking about, he returns from so far back, and we saw how Alcaraz punished him for that in Indian Wells. And I feel like in this surface, it could be even more.
It should be, right?
Yeah, because his drop shots are incredible. He can serve and volley, and he can, like, it's gonna depend on if Medvedev is gonna be able to do his passing shots. But the thing is, Alcaraz covers the net really well when he comes to net. So it's gonna be an interesting dynamic. Now, Medvedev's serve could be a difference. Like, he had a bunch of aces today in his match against Eubanks. I think he actually out-aced Eubanks.
That's impressive.
And he can do that, right?
Wow, he did.
And Alcaraz, he doesn't really get that many cheap points. Now, he's getting more cheap points this year. And in this tournament, he's gotten a lot. I mean, like, we just said that he never got broken against Rune, who's a great returner. I don't think he got broken. Well, he got broken maybe once against Berrettini, and that was it. So he's been serving better, but it's not the same level as Medvedev, right? So I'm interested to see if that's going to be a difference, or if the return position for Medvedev is going to be a liability for him in this matchup on this type of surface. So it's a very intriguing match to me. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. I didn't have any one of them in my semifinal lineup, so this is going to be a new prediction for me. But before I go into predictions, what do you think about the matchup?
Yeah, I also don't know how it's going to play out. I think the surface is going to change the way I think we anticipate it. Like, I guess in hard court it would be like. But, I mean, Alcaraz is playing more grass court tennis.
Yeah.
Right. I think he has the advantage here. He should be able to cut off the balls, with the angles and then coming into the net. If he's on the baseline returning, he clearly has an advantage there. I think it's just about execution. And Medvedev, he's number 3 in the world for a reason. He's gonna make it tough to beat him. But I think Alcaraz is up to the challenge. He's playing really well. So
Prediction?
I have Alcaraz winning that.
I have Alcaraz as well. I think I have Alcaraz in maybe, I'll say 4 sets.
I'll say straight sets.
Straight sets. I can see straight sets. What about Djokovic and Sinner? Sinner wins in what, 4?
I think Sinner could win it in 4, but he's gonna lose it in 5.
Yeah.
if he loses,
So
if he takes it to 5.
If you're predicting Sinner, so he's gonna win in 4 then.
Yeah, he has to win in 3 or 4,
Yeah.
which, it's gonna be tough.
I got Djokovic in 5 sets in that one.
Gosh.
Okay, so let's just do the finals since
Those
we're
are
not
painful.
Yeah.
Let's do the finals. So, okay, so you have Djokovic and Alcaraz in
Yes.
the final. Oof.
My
that's
pre-tournament prediction to win this tournament was Djokovic.
interesting.
I honestly don't know now. I think Alcaraz honestly looks better than Djokovic on this tournament. I think Djokovic is actually vulnerable, but you can't just
cannot
doubt
just
this
write
guy.
him off.
Yeah. So sometimes form doesn't even mean anything. We just saw that in Roland Garros, right? The one thing that I do know is that Alcaraz is not gonna. Well, I don't know this, but I am pretty confident in the fact that I don't think that Alcaraz is gonna have the same nerves that he felt in Roland Garros because he's gone through that experience. He's also gonna be the underdog in this match. In Roland Garros, he was the favorite, so he also had that extra pressure of being the favorite against a legend. You know, now he's gonna be the underdog. I give him a big shot, and I think he wins. Actually, I think I'm gonna change my pick. I think Alcaraz wins this. Yeah.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah, I think he'll win it, probably in 5 because Djokovic is not gonna go away that easy.
In a thriller.
I hope so. I want to see a thriller.
Gosh,
So
that'd be insane.
I think Alcaraz will lift the trophy 5 sets.
Oh.
You got Sinner and Alcaraz there.
Yeah, I want to see Sinner and Alcaraz just battle it out. I honestly don't. I mean, I pick Sinner, and I'm going to stick with Sinner.
Did you have this same final, Alcaraz and Sinner pre-tournament as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to stick the same.
I had Alcaraz and Sinner going in. Yeah, if it's going to be a battle. I think we've seen them play some epic matches, and this court is so fast. It's just going to be like, it's going to be high risk tennis, I think.
Yeah.
And they're both going to go at it. I think it's going to be fun.
It's going to be exciting.
It's going to be exciting.
If it happens, yeah.
Yeah.
I think any permutation of these finals
I think it's gonna
be amazing.
Awesome. Yeah.
Even Medvedev against Djokovic, it's always a great battle between the two of them. Because Djokovic is not afraid of, Medvedev is not afraid of Djokovic. He's already shown that.
Yeah.
So I think all of these potential permutations, except maybe Medvedev and Sinner, because there is a big matchup problem there.
Wait, what's the matchup problem?
Sinner cannot touch Medvedev. He's undefeated against Sinner, 6-0, including this year in Miami. So it's a bad matchup for him. But
it's like Iga having a Rybakina problem.
Correct. It's kind of like that, but it's worse because at least I think Iga has beaten Rybakina at some point, just not in this form when Rybakina's discovered her new form. But I think all of these potential matches could be very fun. But I think Alcaraz against Sinner or Djokovic are probably the most exciting ones, I would say. But yeah, let's move on to the women's.
Let's go to the women's.
Let's start with the matchup of Svitolina. So for the women's quarterfinals, I don't want to go into all of them. I didn't really catch too much of the Pegula Vondrousova, but I do want to talk about 2 of them before we go into the semifinals. I want to do Svitolina versus Iga Swiatek, and I want to do Jabeur against Rybakina because these were incredible matches, and I honestly also kind of want to talk about Vika and Svitolina as well in the quarterfinal or in the round 16.
This tournament has really these women's matches have been amazing.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
And we have to mention a few other matches that were before this in the 4th.
Yeah, we just have to because there was that one day where you were texting me like, "Are you watching this?"
I was watching both of the matches at the same time because they were so good.
It was great. In the stream that I was watching, I have the one of these what is it, Fubo TV or whatever, cable, and they were split screening both of them, so you could see them both in the same TV, and it was fantastic.
It was wonderful
because both matches were just absurd. And just for the listeners, the match we're referring to are Alina Svitolina against Victoria Azarenka and Iga Swiatek against Belinda Bencic. So that was the round prior to the quarterfinal, and they were playing side by side at the same time, and these were both just epic matches. Swiatek came down from match point in the second set, and she just hit some incredible shots. I mean, she just went for it down match point, and
he has a little bit of drama too. I think Bencic was maybe she was shaking her arm. She had it all wrapped up, and she was still playing really well. It was just
She just has that Sinner ability of perfect timing. Like she can take the
clean.
she could take the ball on the rise, and she takes so much time away from her opponent, and that's something that Sinner does so well as well. And it was fantastic against Iga because Iga, like, she takes her time to load up for her shots, right? She needs some time to get in position to hit that forehand, and I think that's something that moving forward, Iga, to get better on grass, she needs to flatten that ball a little bit more, because she hits too much topspin on this surface, and it's not that conducive for her to really be that successful. And Benches was really just taking advantage of that and just hitting the ball, using Iga's heaviness on the shot to just redirect and taking all the time away from Iga. She was really making it hard for her. The fact that Iga overcame that, it was just a testament to her champion's mentality. You know, she's a Grand Slam champion not for no reason, right? But even better than that match was the Svitolina and Azarenka.
Oh my gosh,
that match was absurd.
That's so great.
And I just gotta say, from Svitolina, beating Azarenka, and then obviously we just mentioned that she also took out Iga Swiatek in the quarterfinal to make her semifinal run there. Like, she is a total different player from what I remember. She is just going after her forehand. She is serving bigger. She's playing like an aggressive player now. Yeah. And she used to be more of a defensive player before. Right. She would just, hit the ball back and just wait for errors for the most part. Mm-hmm. And it was very good to be in the top 5 or whatever she was, right? She's in top 5, top 10 for a long time. But it just didn't get her to that next level, right? You need that little extra against the better players. But
she does not look like that player anymore.
She does not look like that player. She does look like she has that little extra now.
She has more than that. She's hitting fearlessly.
Yeah. I mean, some of those shots down the line, those backhands and forehands that she was hitting, going after them, just incredible stuff. And just taking it to Azarenka and to Iga in these matches.
Yeah, the Azarenka match just had everything in it. It was just... I think the whole third set was just like so much, just a battle. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember who mentioned this, maybe Johnny Mack or someone who was commentating long time ago in tennis, but they say they had said, the third set or the final set, the fifth set in men's tennis is like whoever wants it the most.
Yeah.
And both of these players really wanted it.
Yeah.
Azarenka, I mean, she's been at the top before, but she's also had a baby, right?
Yeah.
Both of these ladies.
She's basically paving the way for a lot of the players that have been doing it now.
And she's fought her way back up, and she was really close to winning this match, right?
Yeah.
A point or two, right?
Yeah. Well, she was up. I think she went up like 7-4 in the final set tiebreak. It goes to 10 now.
Yeah.
And she was like up 7-4, and then Svitolina won like 4 points in a row or something like that. But she was in trouble, Svitolina, in that tiebreak.
Yeah, there's so much drama. So if there's a chance to watch it in real, like back in like those final moments.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and try to watch it because there's just so much. This is what tennis is all about.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, just to watch these amazing matches. So.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I just gotta say a plug for women's tennis. These two matches were right. Nothing else was happening, right? And these two matches were just
perfect,
absolutely amazing matches. And there is no reason why this could not be showcased in other Grand Slams. I think Wimbledon. I gotta say. Many days I've seen 2 women's matches and 1 men's match on center court. They've had no problems with viewership. They have no problem selling tickets. So the other Grand Slams, the other Masters events, take note, it can be done. And these matches prove that we can have high quality matches on the women's side as well. So I'm very happy with, the fact that Wimbledon has been doing this, and this whole issue with the men and the women has been a non-issue in this tournament. We have really not needed to talk about it, right? As a talking point, really, except to praise them.
There was one thing. I can't remember who mentioned this, but it was about getting tickets, like their family to come out and watch, and that the women, I guess it's not just like all the women, but not the top some people have preferential to get extra tickets so the family, or they get a whole box, of tickets, where some people only got 2 or
Gotcha.
something like that.
I didn't hear about that, but yeah, I'm not surprised that there's some level of still.
Yeah, there's something there.
There's always something.
Yeah.
But on the whole, like I gotta say, like compared to
The way
Roland Garros,
they schedule these matches, yeah.
yeah, I mean, Roland Garros is a shit show in terms of that, right? And they had a year they did this last year, and they were hammered about it, said they were going to change it, and they did it again this year. So I think Wimbledon really was able to show that, yeah, I mean, obviously, we can talk all day about differences between men and women, viewership and fandom, whatever it is. The point is that we had 2 fantastic matches that were showcased at the same time, both on center court 1, and everybody was glued to them, and it was fantastic. So we can have great women's matches and men's matches. We can celebrate all of it. So I think we did a good job for Wimbledon there. But yeah, Svitolina, I'm so impressed. I mean, we've talked about how she's a mother recently, right? And the fact that she's making her semifinal run now, and the way she beat Iga is just a fantastic story. I think that this is probably the story of the tournament. And, with the segue to the next match, she's going to play Vondrousova, which is an incredible opportunity for both of them, really. Yeah. But the way that Svitolina is playing, like, she should win this match. And, even if it was Pegula, I think she should win this match. Because, I mean, she took out Iga and Azarenka, and she took out other Grand Slam champions. I mean, she took out Sofia Kenin, who took out Coco Gauff in the first round. So she's been beating Grand Slam champions back to back, right? Back to back the whole time. And even Venus in the first round, who granted is not the same player that she used to be, right? But just the quality of opposition that she's played at this point, she should be making this final. So really impressed with her. I guess the other match that I want to talk about, obviously we know that Sabalenka made that semifinal. She beat Keys. We'll talk about her tournament when we talk about semifinal preview, but I did want to give a shout to the match between Jabeur and Rybakina, because this is a...
So you're talking about, we were just talking about Svitolina.
Yeah.
This is at a different level almost.
Yeah.
Too, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because she beat 2 Wimbledon champions back to back, both of which were favorites to beat Ons Jabeur. And she not only beat them, she convincingly beat them.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy. And even though it said that she did lose against Rybakina, she should have won that set. She was serving for it. She lost her concentration, got into the tiebreak, lost it. But then she dominated after that. And it was incredible.
Yeah, I was very impressed by her variety in her game, and the fact that she's able to counter punch very well. I mean, Rybakina was blistering the ball too. She's a big hitter, and Ons was just
just redirecting.
She's redirecting, but she was redirecting so precisely that it was just like she was in her zone, it seemed, like throughout the whole
She looked so confident. Like
so confident.
Her ground strokes just looked like you have all the conviction in the world, and she was just like going down the line. She was doing drop shots off of serves.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
Playing around.
She was just playing around.
At some point she was playing around. I mean, if you can take out Kvitova also in straight sets, in one set 6-0.
Yeah.
And Kvitova was not playing bad. I mean, she might have had an off day in some respects.
Yeah.
Like, she was maybe not finishing the points. I think that was a big problem with Kvitova. But she was still hitting and setting up the points really well.
Yeah.
And Ons just like was like one extra shot or
It's very difficult to sort of evaluate how Kvitova played, because she was ending the points with a lot of errors a lot of the time.
Yeah, but
the setup to the point were great.
Beautiful.
And he just couldn't get it past Jabeur.
Ons,
So
Jabeur was just too good.
She was too good, and just great anticipation for a lot of these shots too, and just the variety, like you said. I mean, it's just absurd the amount of times that she can just hit drop shots out of serves. Like that's just that's like Bublik, like
This is-
exhibition tennis.
And that's why I think you mentioned, Bublik could have troubled Djokovic if
Yeah.
he had gone through. I think Ons Jabeur is that unconventional player that tries these crazy shots and on grass. It's very effective. Like
Yeah.
some of these quote unquote junk shots
Exactly.
that throw the rhythm off.
Yeah,
of
this
the,
is the surface
yeah.
that really rewards that.
Yeah.
And Ons is great at that stuff.
Mhm.
So I'm super impressed.
And
And
she was moving amazing.
yeah, she was
Honestly,
moving amazing.
flying.
I mean, she's
She's
Wimbledon
so fast.
finalist, right? She did it last year. We know she can play
Yeah.
on the grass.
Yeah,
But
so this is a rematch, right,
yeah,
from the final last year.
there's a rematch from the final last year, and she got revenge, and it was great to see that. And like you said, she beat Kvitova 6-love in that first set. She also beat Rybakina 6-1 in the last
In
set.
that
And
last set. Oh,
so-
she was cruising.
that's just dominant performance against two Wimbledon champions. That's not any.
That's no
And
joke.
Kvitova, I mean, speaking of statistically good players this year, Kvitova
Kvitova-
is number 4 in win percentage coming into Wimbledon. So she has technically been the fourth best player, by a long shot, right? The top 3 are way ahead. But she's basically been the fourth best player.
Zabalenka, I mean,
Took her out like nothing. And then Rybakina has been the third best player this year statistically
there you go.
and took her out as well. So that is
Yeah.
impressive.
Iga's out, and now Zabalenka. Yeah.
Sabalenka's right in her way now.
Yeah.
And maybe with that, we should segue into the
Yeah.
semifinal preview. Let's do that. How about we start with that one? Jabeur and Sabalenka. What do we think?
Oof. This is going to be a tough one. So if Zabalenka wins this match, apparently she gets back to number 1 in the world.
That is
right?
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So-
not back. That would be the first time, right? Would it be the
It's
first time? I
never
think it would be
mind.
the first time. So it
She
would.
never was number 1.
I don't think she was. I think she's
Okay.
been 2 with them. I might be wrong,
So
but I'm
Iga's
pretty
been
sure that would be
very
the first time.
dominant.
She's been very dominant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right here.
And honestly, it would make sense. She feels like she's been the best player this year.
So I think she probably has some motivation to win this match then.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a tough match to predict. It's particularly like if you would have told me pre-tournament,
I would have said Zabalenka.
right, without thinking, right.
Yeah.
But after seeing what I've seen from Jabeur, it's very
So
tough to
impressive.
predict because it feels like Rybakina and Kvitova are probably the best grass court players in this draw, right? And she beat them back to back, so I think she can handle Sabalenka then.
I think so.
The one thing though is that Sabalenka is a better mover than Rybakina and Kvitova. And I wonder like how much that's going to have an impact in that matchup because she has the power game that Rybakina and Kvitova have, but she also moves better, right? And she's been a lot better physically this year. She worked a lot on that, and she fixed her serving problems, right? She's also a Grand Slam champion now, so she has that belief and that confidence that she can do it, which was a problem before, right?
Huge problem.
Huge problem, but
Yeah.
that's not a problem anymore. And Sabalenka's been showing up time and time again in all these big tournaments, making the finals, making the semifinals, or winning some of them, right?
Mhm.
So it's very difficult to not pick Sabalenka in this matchup, but something
Interesting.
tells me that Jabeur is the person to beat now, just because of the confidence and the story, right? She's trying to be a role model for basically all of Africa, not only Tunisia, right? But she's representing, everyone over there, and everybody's behind her and excited about her and looking to her, and she's taken that on
Mhm.
just masterfully, and it's something that has given her motivation and driven her, and I think she's very, very motivated to get this done this year after she got so close last year. She was one set away. She won that first set against
She was
Rybakina.
close.
She
Yeah.
collapsed a little bit, and Rybakina really also took it away from her. Like, she played
Mhm.
great. I think she might, to me, be able to pull this off. So I am going to pick Jabeur to win this matchup. I can't even remember now who I had. I don't have any of these 4 players in my predictions. I think I had
No.
Mukova winning
Oh,
this
God.
title, who lost in the first round. And I think I had her
had the
against
same.
Vekic, who lost in probably the third or fourth round. So, yeah. So what do I know about tennis? So, yeah, we'll see. But
It's funny. Like, I think I also had Mukova all the way up there, and who would have known that it's kind of hard to make that transition from.
It is tough. And I mean,
There's only
my
a few people who have done it.
my mentality is that her game
From
seems
clay-
better for
I
grass.
know.
But
From clay to
Yeah.
grass, yeah.
she did not play like a pre-tournament, and I feel like
You gotta play.
if you're not Djokovic, you got to play a tournament before, because you need to get some sort of rhythm
Yeah.
before you get into the. And she got a bad draw in the first round, and that was it. But yeah, I think Jabeur in this matchup. What do you think?
Same. I was so impressed just from looking at the highlights when she played against Kvitova and Rybakina. She's flying through the court. She's playing at the utmost confidence I've ever seen
Yeah,
her play. And I remember watching her at the U.S. Open jumping, hitting backhands, and even Wimbledon last year I think was very impressive. But this year has been, at least these last two matches, just been so clean.
yeah.
She's playing out there, and she's enjoying it too. Some really high fist pumps with the racket. I think, kind of says it all to me. I think she's ready.
I think she's ready too.
Yeah.
Cool. So we both have Jabeur. Second semifinal, we have Svitolina and Vondrousova.
Interesting. Okay.
And honestly, I mean, Vondrousova, who knows? Like this, she plays one tournament every 2 years where she's like the best player in the bracket, and then disappears for like 2 years. It's so hard to predict her. I mean, she has a lot of talent, but honestly, at the moment, it's so difficult to not see Svitolina. Like similar to Jabeur, it's all about what she's been able to accomplish in these past rounds, right? Against the opposition that she's been able to accomplish it against. Beating an Azarenka, who actually something that we didn't mention.
Azarenka played well.
Well, Azarenka played well, and she is also 5-0 against Svitolina coming into this match. So she overcame a really bad head-to-head between them, and then she went on and beat the number one player in the world. So if she's doing that, it's so difficult for me to see her losing to anybody not as elite as those players that she beat. Like a Jabeur, like a Rybakina, like a Sabalenka.
Like a mental lapse.
Exactly.
But I don't see that happening.
So yeah, I honestly think it's gonna be Svitolina in the final. What do you think?
Same here.
Yeah. So Svitolina and Jabeur.
Yep.
What do you got? I want both of them to win.
Such a tough one.
Yeah.
Because I'm rooting for both of them.
I know,
actually.
me too.
Yeah, I think we texted each other earlier today, and we're like, "Oh, wouldn't it be great to see both of them in the final?" Yeah, I just want to see that final. I won't say who. I'm just joking.
You gotta say somebody has to
Someone
win.
has to win. I'm gonna give it to. Oh man. See, I feel like both of them would deserve it. It's a coin toss. I'm gonna put. Oh man, I'm going back and forth. I'm gonna say Svitolina.
Svitolina, huh?
Svitolina.
Yeah. I think Jabeur, and the reason is because I think Jabeur just has a little bit more reps on the grass and more confidence on that surface from what she did last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, this is a toss-up if it happens, right?
I think it's going to be a play. Both of them are going to play their hearts out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I think both of them have big reasons to be motivated, right? Both of them are playing for bigger causes than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Jabeur in her sense is for representation, for players from Tunisia, she can inspire more people to pick up a racket over there, and she's just an inspiration to a lot of people in that sense. And then Svitolina, with the whole issue with the war and the fact that she is a mother that's coming back, she just has so many things to be proud of, right? And to fight for in terms of motivations for you to win. So they both have really big reasons in and out of the court to be motivated to win this title. So and the tennis is there for both of them. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a toss-up if that matchup happens. Obviously, we have to we both pick the same final, but we do have to also concede that Sabalenka is probably the favorite to win this title from this point on. So that's also a consideration, right? That Sabalenka is probably the favorite to win this.
What are you talking
overall.
about? The wild card? You don't think can win this? Is not the
Who?
favorite.
Joshua? I mean,
No,
I've
is it?
seen.
Svitolina is. Wild
Oh,
card.
she's the wild card. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah,
Right?
that's crazy. Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah.
The thing is that I'm thinking of her as, already like
Yeah.
one of the top players this year because
Which-
she's like 20 something in the ranking now, in the live ranking.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is that she started like 1,000 or something like that before she came back. And
There
she
you go.
started losing in challenger events in her
That's
first
It's
matches
an amazing story.
and then
Yeah.
turn it around. It's crazy. But yeah, wild card. You're right. She's a wild card too. I mean, she's made this round before. That's why she feels like she belongs here.
Right.
But at the end of the day, Sabalenka is definitely the favorite, and we do have to say that because she has been showing time and time again this year that in the bigger events, she's a force to be reckoned with. So I think anything can happen, honestly.
Yeah.
Just watch Vandrushova win this title. Just that's what's gonna happen, right? Because it's the only one that we haven't talked about. But yeah, I think it's gonna be an exciting semifinal for both the men and the women. It's gonna be great, and I can't wait to watch.
So you think
these matches.
Jabor is gonna win?
I think Jabor.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see.
You got Svitolina, I got
Yeah,
Jabor.
Svitolina.
That just means that Sabalenka's going.
No.
The way we've been picking.
Wild card. It's gonna be like that year Ivanisevic won
Right.
as a wild card.
That'd be cool. Okay, so maybe let's start wrapping up. So we have some other stories that have happened. I think because we have been talking for a while now, we'll leave them for the recap
Mhm.
of our Wimbledon tournament. So next week on the pod, we're gonna recap the men's semifinals, women's semifinals, and then the finals for both as well. And then there's some other stories that we want to touch on. I think for me, something that stood out from these few weeks of Wimbledon, Andy Murray and Dominic Thiem came very close to beating Tsitsipas in the first and second rounds.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame that they couldn't get it done because these are two guys that we've been trying to root to really make that comeback and do something competitive. And Murray's been closer and a little better, but it's just such a heartbreaking losses for both of them.
Yeah.
They were both so close. So
But
that's
a great,
something.
great match.
Yeah.
Murray and Tsitsipas. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Very
That
high
was
quality.
exciting
Yeah.
to watch.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next episode as well. And some other stories like Mira Andreeva, who is the very exciting teenager. We've talked about her a few times in different tournaments, and she's been taking out really good players.
It's been Carlos's pick.
Yeah. So she's only 16 years old.
There you go.
So
Yeah,
she's
the
somebody
Eiffel
to
Tower.
watch.
Yeah.
And she had another great tournament again. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We got to talk about Matteo Berrettini.
Man.
What a comeback that man made,
What a
huh?
random comeback.
It's so random.
He just loves the grass.
Yeah. I mean, he made the Wimbledon final a few years
Yeah.
ago. So we knew that he had that in him. So we should talk about that as well. How about another comeback? Milos Raonic. He was in this draw and won a match.
There you go.
So we should give a few minutes to him.
Yeah, but I think Berrettini was a bracket buster for me.
Yeah, he was. I mean, there was no way we could have
Yes.
known he was going to be this good. But yeah,
Yeah.
and then we'll also talk about, I mean, we already previewed a little bit when I talked about the American men, but we'll also talk about some of the players that we talked about, some of the ones that we were really excited about and that did great, and we'll talk about then some of the players that have a little bit more disappointing results. So all of that, we'll talk about it next week. We'll probably go into some power rankings as well and look ahead to what's coming up for the U.S. Open Series. So that's going to be exciting. So to end,
Yeah.
you wanna close us off, or you want me to do it?
I'll let you do it today.
Okay. So for the end of the show, remember to participate in our fantasy league.
Yeah.
So we have the fantasy league on TNNS. So that's where we're doing our predictions competitions. We did that for Wimbledon. So continue to do that for as we go on to our next tournaments. And if you like what you hear, please do subscribe to us on YouTube, Point by Point Tennis Podcast, and then our social media platforms on Reddit and on Twitter at Point by Point Pod. And our next episode for now, tentatively, is going to be probably next Wednesday.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can do it a little bit earlier, but if not, it will be next Wednesday to recap Wimbledon. And that is the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and have a good one.
Enjoy the semis and the finals.
Enjoy. Have a good night.
Good night.